Hello and welcome to this pre-conference session of the SLN conference, supporting and engaging siblings of people with disabilities in today's world. My name is Chris Bursler and I will be the moderator for this session. Just as a reminder, if your camera is on, we can see you, and if your microphone is on, we can hear you. Please mute yourself. Please use the chat box or raise hand function for any questions that you may have. As a reminder, this session is going to be recorded and will be made available to SLN members in our online archives. I am putting a link in the chat box for any conference handouts right now. And if you are pre-registered to receive continuing education credits, we will need to verify your attendance. So please place your name in the chat box now and make sure it's to everyone so that we can record it. You will also be asked to do this at the end of the session. Please make sure that the name you type matches the name that you registered with so that we can verify your attendance. And now I will turn it over to our wonderful presenters.
We will kick off this presentation with introductions and talk about the sibling organizations that we work with. Next, we will explain why the sibling relationship is important. Then we will share a little about sibling needs and resources across the life course, childhood, teen years, and adulthood. And finally, we will discuss specific ways and tips for providers to engage and support siblings in their work. My name is Shawnnita Buckner, and I am the Board of Directors Vice Chair for the Sibling Leadership Network. For more than 10 years, I have been a leader in the behavioral health services industry. Active in my community, I have a passion for supporting community partners and agencies, such as the SLN and the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, or IDD, Council of Tarrant County. I strive to bring inclusion, awareness, and education to the community to ensure individuals with IDD and their families can thrive. As a sibling to an adult with IDD, since the age of 13, I have been helping to care, support, and advocate for my older brother, Jay. My family's story is often categorized as unique, as my brother was not born with disabilities. Due to a terrible car accident, Jay experienced a significant amount of brain trauma and was diagnosed with IDD thereafter. Jay is also in a wheelchair and lives at home with our mother and stepfather. There aren't enough words to describe Jay. He is one of the most fantastic people you will ever meet. He is always smiling and giving you the best compliments. Through all adversity, he remains positive and upbeat, often reminding me of the old saying, when life gives you lemons, well, you know the rest. Just as I am a wife and mother, being Jay's sister is also a big part of who I am. The SLN is a national nonprofit whose mission is to provide siblings of individuals with disabilities the information, support, and tools to advocate with their brothers and sisters and to promote the issues important to them and their entire families. The SLN provides information and peer support to siblings of people with disabilities across the lifespan. We now have over 6,000 people in our network across the country. The SLN is welcoming to siblings of people with all types of disabilities, and we tend to draw the most members of siblings of people with IDD. The SLN is primarily a volunteer organization that we have a dedicated group from across the country helping to build and grow the network. I invite each of you to join the SLN if you haven't already. It is easy and it is free. Just sign up on the website, siblingleadership.org. We also connect by Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. You don't have to be a sibling to get involved. Sibling supporters You don't have to be a sibling to get involved. Sibling supporters are an important part of our community network. This includes anyone who supports siblings, including parents, sib-in-laws, other family members, self-advocates, professionals, friends, and colleagues of SIBs. Our network also welcomes siblings of people with disabilities who have died. We believe once a sibling, always a sibling, and welcome in our network. Currently, the SLN has 27 chapters in different states, with the vision that eventually every state will have a sibling chapter. So while the SLN, our national organization and headquarters here in Chicago, we also have state chapters in Illinois.
My name is Shirley, and I've been a special education teacher for 5 years. I'm also the secretary for the Sibling Leadership Network. I lived in Chicago until April of this year. I moved to Oregon with my husband and our puppy, and this is my family. They live in Chicago. I have 2 younger sisters. One is 15 years old, and my sister with Down syndrome is 22 years old. I grew up in a single mother home, and my mother knew a limited amount of English as I was growing up. She was able to set up Medicaid, SSI, and support my sister in school as best as she could by attending her IEP meetings. It was normal for me to translate for my mother as I was growing up. As I was translating things in high school that were related to my sister, I was also learning about the special education system. I learned about an important resource such as puns when I was volunteering in a special education classroom in high school. Then I learned about more resources during college and graduate school. And I shared those with my mother and my students' families. I participated in a future planning study, and that made me realize that there was still so much more that my family and I had to plan for my sister's future. I started to look into how to set up a special needs trust fund and becoming my sister's co-guardian. My biggest fear was that she would lose her benefits if we did not plan. Being her co-guardian has helped me with navigating doctors and any medical related information. I usually have to send the guardianship documents to the doctor in order to be able to ask for information or manage any information. I was able to help my mother even more with learning about different resources and guiding her through the system with being in the special education field. I think of it as being a puzzle where my mom and I put in different pieces and have worked together to build it. Currently, the SLN has 27 chapters in states, with the vision that eventually every state will have a sibling chapter. Chapters are the grassroots of the organization and maintain the more personal contact with people, ensuring that they get the information and support they need at the state and local level. For example, when I lived in Illinois, I was part of the Illinois chapter supporting Illinois brothers and sisters. It is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide support to siblings of people with disabilities in Illinois by connecting them with information, networking opportunities, and resources in order to enhance the quality of life for their entire families. I heard of this group when I participated in a future planning study when I was 25. I had no idea this type of support was out there, and was thankful that I was able to connect with other siblings and be part of this community. SIBS has provided numerous presentations on the value of supporting siblings, hosted many adult sibling gatherings, hosted SIP shop training programs, and hosted many SIP shops. Each chapter has its own feel and flavor, and all chapters agree to the mission and values of the National SLN.
So, why is it important to focus on the experience of siblings? While the relationship changes over time, siblings often have the longest relationship of their lives with each other. We will be there for each other 20 plus years longer than our parents. The pure nature of the sibling relationship uniquely positions us to support each other to lead self-determined lives. Yet, the sibling experience is often overlooked and sometimes even forgotten. Traditionally, service and support structures typically focus on the roles that parents play in the lives of their children with disabilities, while less attention has been given to the role that siblings play. Each sibling has a unique experience. Even each child within a family can have a very different perception. Yet, there are often similarities within that difference.
So now I'll talk a little bit about the role, needs, and resources for siblings across the lifespan. Let's start with childhood. Siblings do not choose to be related, but they will always be family. Because siblings are often the first and most intense peer relationships that children encounter, they learn many social skills from their sibling interactions, such as sharing, collaborating, resolving differences, and compromising. Siblings are often each other's first everything: first friend, teacher, teammate, and confidant, and possibly the first wrestling partner, competitor, and tattletale. Our sibs help prepare us for the world in many ways as we learn how to fight and make up, how to confide and comfort one another. Siblings often learn to be advocates at a young age, handling questions from peers or addressing people who are staring at their siblings or potentially stigma by association. For me, I always knew my sister was different as I was growing up, but did not know what Down syndrome was until I started volunteering in a special education classroom. I wish I knew earlier about it. Childhood is a time when parents, teachers, professionals, and relatives play an important role in helping equip kids with the information and tools to speak up. They need the language to answer tough questions or respond to ignorant comments. It is helpful to have a rehearsed script to answer questions. Children who are siblings are often craving developmentally appropriate information about their sibling's disability or condition. Parents often assume that siblings know the answers to these questions, but they might not. Questions that siblings sometimes ask are, what is the name of their sibling's health condition or disability? How did it affect their siblings? How did their sibling acquire their disability? Did the sibling in any way cause it, or can they catch it? Siblings often really want time alone with their parents. This can be hard to schedule, but can be critical to meeting the needs of a sibling of a child with a disability. Peer nature of the sibling relationship uniquely positions siblings to support each other. Sibs can have insights into the behaviors of their brothers and sisters and how to include their sibs in activities. They know key strategies and are often not asked.
So now let's talk about the teen years. Sibling relationships continue to evolve from childhood through adolescence. Of course, adolescence is a time of change that also can alter the sibling relationship. Individuals are going through physical and emotional changes, as well as developing their own identity separate from their family and expanding their own social networks. At school, teens can become very concerned about fitting in, and this can be a time when they become aware of their siblings' differences. It's important to validate and normalize for teen siblings that a range of emotions is acceptable. It's a time that they may feel a lot of divergent and conflicting emotions. Transition age is often when siblings often leave the family's home to go to college or enter the workforce. Sometimes this can be difficult. Parents can ask their teens how they are feeling about any upcoming transitions and help teens talk through these things. Also, parents can help teens connect with other teens who really get it, so their adolescents can get support from peers who understand. Parents can also work on equitable treatment. This seems impossible, but it can be a goal. Most siblings do distinguish between equality and equity in parental treatment. They know their siblings have different needs, such as more support and attention at time. And they are okay with their parents treating them differently in these cases. But keeping open the lines of communication is very important. Therefore, find out what your children think. Talk to them about this. Be aware if they do perceive an unfair difference, and find out what could help them to not feel this way. This is an important time for siblings to work on navigating conflicts with each other. Sometimes parents ask about conflict in sibling relationships, and conflicts can be healthy. While parents may try to intervene and eliminate conflict, this may be harmful to the development of children in adolescence. It is a tricky balance, though, and parents can decide when to intercede and when to not. Sometimes when there is a child with disabilities, there can be a tendency for parents to overprotect and intercede in most conflicts. Just know that allowing some conflicts is good, and allowing siblings to work through disagreements together can strengthen the sibling relationship. Research shows that regardless of how large the family is, most often the oldest sister takes on the greatest caregiving duties for their brothers or sisters with disabilities. We can really see this development in the teen years. There might be an older sister that babysits a lot, and while this is great, sometimes it can be difficult for the sibling to be asked to step into the role of parent. In addition to needs, I want to talk about some opportunities. Siblings may provide each other with companionship and emotional support as friends. Siblings can serve as a guide in navigating social situations such as at school. For siblings that may attend the same school as their brother or sister with disabilities, they could have some important insight from a peer level about things that can be very helpful for parents and teachers. Siblings will know from the adolescent perspective and have the inside scoop on friendship dynamics, cliques, and more. For example, siblings might know hallways or stairways to avoid or which bathrooms to avoid because certain people hang out there. Parents and teachers could ask siblings to share their knowledge and expertise and show how they value the siblings' perspectives. Also, siblings could be invited to be a part of IEP meetings and contribute their knowledge and insights. However, make sure the person with disabilities wants their sib there before you extend an invitation.
Switching our focus now to adulthood. There are many things we could talk about in this life stage, and I just really am touching on the tip of the iceberg here. We find that adult siblings need a lot of information and peer support. The adult years bring about things that siblings have been thinking about and wondering, but often feel unprepared to walk together with their siblings. Adulthood is a time when roles are being transitioned and renegotiated. People are finding life partners, potentially getting married, and maybe having children, exploring and excelling in their careers, making new friends, changing geographic locations, changing homes, and potentially helping care for their older relatives. And for siblings of people with disabilities, they may have additional roles they play with siblings. Peer support is critical. Often siblings in their 20s, 30s, and 40s tell us they had never met another sibling before. Can you imagine if we asked parents to wait 20 years to talk to another parent? Because of the peer nature of the relationship, siblings can really provide support with their brothers and sisters in areas such as social media, employment, voting, transportation, relationships, and sexuality, healthcare, housing supports, and more. As we mentioned earlier, most siblings anticipate taking on greater caregiving roles as their parents age. Parents do an amazing job creating supports, but these supports are often widely known by siblings. Sibs usually have a lot to learn about the service system and how to navigate it. Parents are amazing service navigators. They live and breathe the day-to-day caregiving over a lifetime. What we find is that there's a very steep learning curve when sibs take on a greater caregiving role. And often this coincides with a time when their family is in crisis, which is not a good thing. Siblings need to be prepared sooner. We need information, and we need to start being part of future planning conversations sooner and be engaged in the process to the extent we want to be.
Many people are familiar with the term sandwich generation, but siblings of people with disabilities are often referred to as the club sandwich generation. Siblings have multiple caregiving responsibilities they often juggle. They provide caregiving and support to their aging parents, their own children, as well as the extra layer of their brother and sisters with disabilities. The ultimate club sandwich occurs when siblings become the next generation of caregivers when parents are no longer able to fill this role. This can be overwhelming and too big to take a bite out of, as the photo of this can be overwhelming and too big to take a bite out of. I want to point out, I love a good club sandwich. It involves lots of wonderful things, but it takes me a little longer to get through, and I need some help managing it all. As siblings become more involved in the care of their brother or sister with disabilities, their own support needs will likely increase. Therefore, it is critical to understand what support siblings need from their viewpoint. Also, as a sibling gets the support they need, their brothers and sisters with disabilities will have better outcomes. Future planning is something that can really help. Again, we are just scratching the surface here. We don't have time to cover this topic thoroughly, but I just want to say, people are often reluctant to start talking about future planning because it requires them to acknowledge their own mortality, which understandably provokes anxiety. Additionally, families are often overwhelmed at the lack of options and resources or their lack of knowledge about options and resources. And many parents talk about how they do not want to burden their own children with thoughts of the future. Yet, whether parents are talking about it or not, I guarantee you that most sibs are thinking about it and possibly worrying about it. In the long run, talking about the future will help alleviate stress, getting things out in the open, and making sure people know how to prepare for the future. Siblings usually have much to learn about the service system and how to navigate it. We don't live and breathe the day-to-day caregiving over a lifetime the way our parents do. There is a very steep learning curve when siblings take on greater caregiving roles. And often, this coincides with a time when their family is in crisis, which is not a good thing. Siblings need to be prepared and be prepared sooner. We need information and we need to be part of conversations about future planning and be engaged in the process to the extent we want to be. Most siblings anticipate taking on greater supportive and caregiving roles in the future. However, many of us are kind of waiting in the wings, so to speak, without really knowing what it means or how to be prepared. Information does not always flow naturally down from parents to siblings, yet we are often expected to play a key role in terms of support and caregiving when parents are no longer able to. We often don't even know what we need to know. This learning curve will not be as steep with family future planning. While each family has its own unique dynamics, all families are formed by their family and community history, including racial and ethnic background. Professionals should keep this in mind when we are working with families and customizing support to individuals. The SLN strives to be a community that includes people of every race, color, national origin, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, religion, political affiliation, immigration status, socioeconomic class, and type of disability. It is a goal of the SLN to be a community of siblings of people with disability across all identity groups. We believe that becoming a truly integrated community that equitably serves all members is an ongoing process. As a network, we are committed to doing the work necessary to engage with this process. Some of the activities we are currently working on include hosting important conversations about intersecting identities, collecting stories of diverse experiences to inform policy goals, creating space at national conferences to discuss diversity and social justice issues, engaging in social media campaigns in collaboration with organizations working on social justice issues related to disability and other identities, and collecting and sharing resources that will help our chapters welcome a diverse membership and approach their work through social justice lens.
Therefore, planning for the future is so important, yet also so difficult. There are a number of barriers that often prevent families from future planning. First, it requires parents to acknowledge their own mortality, which understandably provokes anxiety. Second, families don't even know where to start and don't have information about potential options to consider for the future. They also may be unaware of positive possibilities for people with disabilities. Third, a lack of resources and options is a barrier. For example, families may think if they don't have financial resources, then there's no point in planning. However, there may be various ways to get things done or other people that may be able to provide support in a way you hadn't considered. Fourth, many parents talk about how they do not want to burden their other children with thoughts of the future. Yet, whether parents are talking about it or not, most of us sibs are thinking about it and worrying about it. In the long run, talking about the future will help alleviate stress by getting things out in the open and making sure people know how to prepare for the future. There's no easy way to break through these barriers. However, being aware of them and even naming them within your own family has helped. What is the sibling role in future planning? It can vary depending on the person and the family. In general, there are a few roles that siblings can play. Siblings can help identify concerns about the future and get family members sharing. It could be through a group gathering or one-on-one conversations where you ask a few questions like, do you have any worries about the future? What do you envision the future might look like? Siblings can help plant seeds in the minds of other family members so they begin slowly thinking more about the future, and this might lead to further discussions. Also, siblings can help gather information that could be useful for the family as they plan. Siblings can advocate for services and supports for their brothers and sisters with disabilities and their entire family. Connecting and networking with other siblings in similar situations or other families that have started the future planning process can be useful. Siblings can try to make these connections for their families. Getting the conversation started is one of the hardest parts of future planning. The Advisory Council of the ARC Center for Future Planning is an amazing resource for siblings and families. I encourage you to check out their website at futureplanning.thearc.org. They have an interactive site that helps families work through the areas of planning and saves the information in a way that family members can share and update along the way. They have developed a tip sheet that includes ways to break the ice to get the conversation started. Siblings should talk to their parents about why planning for the future is so important. Tell them how it could help the sibling, your sib with a disability, and the whole family. Siblings need to be honest about their hopes and their fears. Siblings need to think about the role they may be willing to play in the future. What information do the parents need to help the sibling with this role? Also, siblings should be clear about the responsibilities they do not feel comfortable playing in the future. Siblings should think about the people in their brother or sister's life that should be part of the conversation, and whether you should all talk as a group or talk with some people individually. Siblings need to make sure they talk to their sib with disabilities about what it means to plan for the future. Give him or her time to think about things ahead of time and prepare for the meeting. Think of strategies that may be needed to use to include the SIB in the conversation. For families that are spread across the country and world, you may need to connect some people by phone or Skype. As I was growing up, I saw how church was a great support for my family. and the impact it had on my sister's life. When we started planning for my sister's future, we included our church friends as one of her natural supports. Starting a conversation can help families open the door to do more conversations and thinking about future planning.
When siblings take on greater involvement, including caregiving roles, they need time to learn how to incorporate these roles into their lives. And for families with multiple siblings, research shows that there is often one sibling, typically the older sister, who becomes the primary caregiver. It can be challenging for families to learn how to communicate with these new roles and to work through resentment that often will come up. Also, for many siblings, learning how to interact with providers is new and not easy. Learning about the system of bureaucracy and trying to understand all of the acronyms can be daunting. Siblings who come in with a fresh perspective may share their ideas for ways to make things better and more efficient. Sometimes these ideas can be creative and out of the box, while other times they can be off base and annoying, especially to those of us in the field who have been there and tried that. Sometimes providers can find siblings to be these neophytes who have not been very involved and all of a sudden come in demanding certain changes that don't always make sense. This is part of the learning curve I talked about earlier, and also kind of a growing pain that siblings and providers may have to work through.
So what can you do? You can create programs that support siblings. Include siblings and family future planning meetings. Ask about siblings during intake meetings. Invite SLN or SIPS members to present at your organization for your parents and professionals. Host an adult sibling gathering. Host SIP shops. Include siblings on your board, committees, and in your policies about families. Include the sibling perspective in staff orientation and training. Teach staff members how to identify and engage siblings.
Don't expect siblings to be just like parents. Since siblings have a steep learning curve, it may take a while for them to figure out their role. However, investing in support for siblings will bring a return in the end. Our main role models are our parents, and they set a high bar. Most of us realize with fear in our heart that there is no way we will be able to provide the same type of support that our parents do. I think our parents know this too. And parents will say that they don't want siblings to have to do everything they do. However, if we are being really honest with ourselves, many people want siblings to become like replacement parents. The idea of this, while probably pretty unrealistic, is still kind of the vision that is out there for how siblings should be involved. For siblings, it is mostly because we don't really know how else it could look. We need role models as other siblings to see different ways of doing this. I don't want to be my brother's parent, and I am confident he doesn't want another parent. Siblings may not have ever been invited to an event before. Directly communicate with the siblings. Every now and then, even if it's just once a year to start. Call and ask if they have any thoughts or concerns or insights that could be helpful to you and your job. Ask if they have any questions or need more information about anything. Ask how you could support them. They have probably never been asked this before and might not even know. Respect their level of involvement and be ready to provide support at whatever level they are at. Let them know they can turn to you for information. Support siblings to connect with each other. Maybe have an evening of sibling conversations. Or since siblings are not always in close proximity or are busy, host a conference call where siblings can share their thoughts and experiences over the phone. Maybe even start a sibling committee. Ask the person with a disability how he or she would like his or her sibling involved.
There are a lot of great resources available for siblings of people with disabilities. You can connect with other siblings and resources at siblingleadership.org. You can find information on your state's chapter there too. If your state does not have a chapter yet and you would like to get one started, there's information on the website on how to do this. A lot of great resources for younger siblings can be found at the Sibling Support Project website. That's www.siblingsupport.org. The Sibling Support Project is another important organization that is a resource for siblings. It is a national effort dedicated to the lifelong concerns of brothers and sisters of people with disabilities. John Meyer is the director of the Sibling Support Project, and he is one of the key people who helped found the SLN. John created the SIP model for young kids. SIP are gatherings for siblings to obtain peer support and education within a recreational context. SIP mix in genuine fun activities, messy crafts, silly games, delicious food with a space to talk about, and share what it is like to be a sibling. Siblings can vent some typical sibling frustrations, learn about different disabilities, share strategies like how to deal with bullies or how to handle situations when their friends come over to play. Many SIP are facilitated by adult siblings. I wish I had participated in them as a kid. SIP were originally developed for 8 13-year-old sets of children with developmental disabilities, but the SIP model can easily be adapted for slightly younger and older children, for children with different conditions and health needs. Sam Meyer talks about how the biggest beneficiaries of SIP are likely to be the SIBs who have disabilities. By supporting SIBs as they grow up, it can help these siblings feel more comfortable choosing to remain involved and provide support for the sibling with a disability in the future. If you go on the Sibling Support website, you can find a list of local SIP in your state. John Meyer also started a number of great online spaces for siblings at different ages to connect with their peers. SIP Teens is for teenagers. This is an online closed Facebook group that is a place where teenage SIBs of people with disabilities can connect with other SIBs who get it. It's a fun and thoughtful group where members share unique concerns, joys, frustrations, and information with others who truly understand. SIB 20, for those in their 20s, adult siblings can participate in SibNet, the largest online community for adult brothers and sisters from around the world. These are great online forums where people from across the country and around the world connect with each other for peer support. Co-hosted by the SLN and Sibling Support Project, a space where siblings can share information about services and good news about their SIBs, themselves, and their families. There are a lot of insights and observations that only other sibs are likely to understand. Here's a quote from a sibling on SibNet. She wrote, "The first real sibling encounter is when I first found SibNet at the ripe old age of 50. After reading through years of old posts, after weeping, after laughing out loud and shouting for joy, I realized I found my family. I found my siblings. I found others who could be a witness to my childhood. I finally found I'm not alone. We all just ache to find someone who can say, yeah, I get it. Me too." SiblingResources.org is a page that was formed out of a collaboration with the Sibling Leadership Network and SIBS NY, our New York chapter, funded by the New York Council on Developmental Disabilities. On that page, there are 2 short online training modules, one for siblings and one for disability service providers. It is a self-paced learning on the topic of siblings. There are also a lot of great books written by SIBs for SIBs. Young siblings need information to answer questions from their classmates and deal with bullying. Older siblings need information about how to transition to a greater caregiving role, how to navigate the service system, and how to deal with family dynamics and much more. There are numerous great books and articles available, many which are written by siblings for siblings, including Views from Our Shoes for young kids, Thicker Than Water, with stories from adult siblings at different stages of their life, like when dating, how and when to tell a partner about their sib with disabilities, as well as siblings who are juggling a caregiving role, and much more. The Sibling Survival Guide is one of the newest publications, edited by Don Meyer and Emily Hall, with essays by siblings of people with disabilities that share indispensable information for teens and adults to navigate the journey of being a sibling. Here's a quote from a sibling about it. "I always knew that being my sister's sibling was an essential part of my identity. As an adult, she has shaped my every decision: college, relationships, children, which house to buy, future finances, everything. But now that I know I'm part of a larger community of siblings, I no longer feel I'm hacking away through unfamiliar terrain, trying to forge a trail on my own. There's a guidebook, the Sibling Survival Guide, and fellow travelers. These books can make great gifts, and the proceeds go to the Sibling Support Project and the Sibling Leadership Network." Thank you for participating in this webinar. Please feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat box.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So I'll open things up. I'll open up questions to Shawnnita and Shirley. Please use the chat box or the raise your hand function. And we've got about 10 minutes left. So yeah, go ahead. Oh, actually, I'll start things off. We had a question earlier in the presentation. Chloe asked, when do you recommend SIBs get involved in the planning process?
Hi, Chloe. So I also put it in the chat. So we definitely recommend from the beginning. You know, siblings play such an important role with planning and sharing information that sometimes parents may not be aware of or may not see that their sibling might be able to do. So it's really important to also have that perspective. Also, you know, navigating the system is really difficult sometimes. But the earlier you get to learn about it and the more you do, it'll definitely be helpful with planning for your sibling and your family. And of course, the parents have always been navigating the system, so they know more about it. So definitely jumping in from the beginning. And I love all the comments that were going in the chat as we were presenting. I thought it was really great of Christiana, hope I'm saying that correct, bringing up how the siblings should be able to also ask and not fix, but improve the system that can better support the siblings. And I think it's really important just the advocating, being able to express that to everyone. You know, this is what I'm going through. How can you support us?
Got a question in the chat box. How to explain siblings about disability in early ages, 4 to 5 years old?
As a special education teacher in elementary, it was really interesting to see how we wanted to explain to the younger, not only siblings, but younger students that would interact with the students at that age that had disabilities, and really, you know, keeping it with simple language. And of course, as they get older, the more details, because sometimes they can be too abstract for kids at that age to understand. And one of the things that I really like to share with kids at that young age is, you know, let's say Max sometimes may need a little extra time to get it done, and he might do it differently, but that's okay because he can get it done just like you. So it just being very aware of that and sharing that with that child can be really helpful. So when they do get put in those situations where another child says, why are they doing it that way? And then really that other person can advocate, oh, he just needs a little bit more time, and but he'll be able to do it. Okay. And Shawnnita, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything else.
Chloe's asked, you touched on the transition into adulthood for siblings and leaving for college, getting a job, etc. This was a big idea, or this is a big area of guilt for me. Can you touch on a little more, give some ideas on how to support others?
It's really great that you bring that up, Chloe, because I went through the same thing. It's really hard for me to even leave my family and go on to college 3 hours away. One of the things that I ended up doing is visiting my family quite often, because I wanted to make sure that my family still felt supported, even though I was so far away. And I mean, back then Zoom wasn't such a big thing, so it was just more phone calls than being in person. It's okay to feel guilt because we are always taking care of making sure that nothing goes wrong, right? We want to make sure that our sibling, our family, they're good. And it's good to have that feeling, but sometimes that can be very daunting too, especially when you want to do things that are for you. And one of the things, for example, right now that I'm going through is I actually moved from Chicago to Portland. So my family's still in Chicago, and that was a big decision that I had to make. And it is a transition. It's not easy. So it's definitely a process, but you know, we have to take care of ourselves too. That's something that I always try to remember. And we can be creative. Now with Zoom and everything, you can definitely connect with siblings and family in this format as well. And making those times memorable when you do get to spend time with each other. I think that's really important. And sometimes just even that, having that conversation with your sibling as well. You know, I'm over there, but you know, I still love you. We can still hang out via Zoom or whatever. So that other sibling doesn't feel like, oh, they left me, I can't do that. And finding the ways that siblings also engage while you're not there, because you know, we love our siblings, but they also have their own personality. They have their own wants. So they won't always be doing the same thing that we're doing.
And I think I'll add there, sorry, I was having audio issues, but I agree with what Shirley is saying. And myself, I also felt that guilt when I left for college. My first year, I actually
decided to stay closer to home due to the guilt that I was feeling for leaving. But as I started to connect with other siblings, and I realized that self-care is very important also for me. And eventually in my second year, I made the decision to move away for college. And it probably was one of the best decisions that I had ever made, because it was one of the very first decisions that I made that was for myself. And you know, I stayed in contact with my family. I stayed in contact with my sibling, my brother Jay, and making sure I kept the lines of communication open, making sure that my brother as well as my family knew that I would be there and available if I needed to be. But it was really time for me to focus on myself and focus on my growth as an individual. So I think, as Shirley stated, you have to be so very mindful of that self-care because sometimes we give so much of ourselves to everyone else, including our siblings and our family, that we often forget about ourselves. And it is okay to step away and focus on you.
Nice, thank you. We're about to close up. We've got enough time for maybe one more question if you want to put your question in the comments box, chat box.
Christiana, I definitely agree. You know, just like we were saying, we made the decision to go to college. We wanted to pursue that. Well, siblings also have to be making their own choices on what they want. And it's not like we decide, oh, you must live here, you must be involved in this. We don't tell them that. They have wants as well. And I truly believe that we need to be giving them choices because we get choices. I can't imagine if someone told me that I had to go a certain path and have a certain job and that was my life. I wouldn't be happy.
Awesome. So it doesn't look like there's any more questions. I'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. I just want to say a big thank you to our presenters for presenting such amazing information, and thank you to everyone who joined us for this session. We hope you are joining us for future sessions later today for day 1 or for day 2 or any of the post-conference sessions. If today is your last session with the conference, please complete the evaluation form that I am putting in the chat box now. And if today is not your last day, we would ask that you complete this evaluation after your final session with the conference. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you later today for day 1 of the conference.